An architect's personal home often reveals the most intimate look at their evolving ideas. While civic landmarks and grand commissions may showcase an architect's skill, these projects are typically shaped by client demands, site constraints, or public pressures. By contrast, a private residence, especially one they design for themselves, reflects unfiltered creativity anchored by the daily routines of home life. Examining these spaces is like peeking into an artist's sketchbook where prototypes are tested, philosophies are laid bare, and comfort is balanced against experimentation. Hi everyone, Ken here. Hit that subscribe button and let's explore this house. Frederick Law Olmsted is often described as the father of American landscape architecture, best known for co-designing Central Park and shaping countless public landscapes. Yet at Fairstead, his Brookline, Massachusetts residence and office, we see a more direct portrait of his principles. Olmsted believed that nature should be integrated into daily life, not just relegated to grand parks. At Fairstead, practical rooms formed the heart of the home, while large windows drew in daylight to blur the line between the built and natural environments. The exterior grounds weren't simply an ornamental garden to be admired from inside. Instead, Olmsted organized pathways, plantings, and small scenic touches, like neatly spaced flower beds or carefully sculpted shrubs, to encourage exploration. Each element formed a microcosm of the larger parks he would create for cities, inviting occupants to move through the space rather than merely observe it. Critically, Fairstead affirmed Olmsted's devotion to accessibility and comfort, a subtle demonstration that even a modestly scaled home could embody the ideals that he championed on vast public stages. Had his personal residence been overly theatrical, it might have felt at odds with his emphasis on function and ease. But in Fairstead, Olmsted struck a balance between everyday livability and his grand vision of landscapes as healing, human-friendly environments. Frank Lloyd Wright embodied a very different sense of architectural drama. While Olmsted saw the landscape as a soothing backdrop, Wright insisted that nature and building should exist in almost seamless unity. Over the course of his long career, he designed countless houses, yet his personal residences, such as the Oak Park home and studio, Taliesin and Taliesin West, best display his private explorations. When Wright first acquired the Oak Park, Illinois house in 1889, it was typical of its Victorian era, with fussy ornamentation and compartmentalized rooms. Wright began methodically stripping away these constraints, opening the floor plan, emphasizing horizontal lines, and discarding decorative excess to create a more liberated sense of space. The attached studio where he worked became the birthplace of his early prairie school concepts. By living each day in a home that was part laboratory, part family space, Wright could experiment on site, moving walls or adding features without needing to justify them to a client. Oak Park thus witnessed the germination of ideas later crystallized in famed commissions like the Roby House. Wright's ambition grew grander at Taliesin in the Wisconsin hills. After personal tribulations, he retreated to that lush environment, building and rebuilding the complex multiple times due to fires and expansions. Taliesin is often praised for its low, sweeping roofs and local limestone that make the structure look as if it erupted naturally from the hillside. Inviting terraces, carefully placed windows, and open corridors all reflect Wright's notion that a house ought to serve as an extension of the land, not merely be placed upon it. Even in daily tasks, such as walking from a bedroom to the dining area, were enriched by frames of natural vistas and glimpses of changing light. Critically, Taliesin speaks to Wright's obsession with harmony, his belief that a home should shape a person's lifestyle, encouraging reflection, creativity, and fellowship with nature. At Taliesin West near Scottsdale, Arizona, Wright pushed his experiments into the desert, proving that an organic home could flourish even in a harsh, arid climate. Rather than shielding occupants from the environment, he embraced local stone, created shaded courtyards, and used translucent materials to diffuse the intense sunlight. The ongoing transformations at both Taliesin sites reflected not only Wright's evolving style, but also his commitment to living daily life within the theories he espoused. Meanwhile, Philip Johnson approached the relationship between structure and environment with a radically minimalist lens. His glass house in New Canaan, Connecticut, completed in 1949, is often discussed in terms of its shocking simplicity. During the mid-20th century, many architects were pondering how to open homes to nature, but Johnson took this concept to its ultimate conclusion, removing almost every opaque boundary. By using steel supports and floor-to-ceiling glass panels, he all but erased the lines between indoors and out. This was more than an aesthetic gesture. Johnson believed that transparency could influence one's mindset, prompting a heightened sense of awareness of seasons, light, and weather. Yet living in a glass box also meant sacrificing privacy, which was relegated to a single cylindrical brick core containing the bathroom. From a critical standpoint, the glasshouse raises questions about comfort, practicality, and the exhibitionist quality of modernism. For Johnson, however, that was partly the point. Architecture could be provocative and intellectual. Over the decades, he added other small structures and pavilions on the property, each bearing unique shapes or forms, thereby transforming the estate into a constantly evolving personal museum of spatial experiments. For Richard Neutra, forging a tight bond with the outdoors was similarly important, though his focus lay on user-centric designs and climate considerations. Neutra's VDL research house in the Silver Lake neighborhood of Los Angeles functioned as both a residence and a working studio. California's sunny climate and mild winters allowed him to explore big expanses of glass, open-air patios, and airy interiors. He also studied shading devices, window placement, and ventilation systems to manage the heat, reflecting a pioneering awareness of sustainability before it was commonly discussed. The VDL house, originally completed in 1932 and rebuilt after a 1963 fire, served as Neutra's testbed for ideas about psychological well-being and residential design. He believed architecture could directly influence health and happiness, and by living in an ongoing prototype, he constantly refined these theories. While critics sometimes argue that Neutra's sleek minimalism lacks emotional warmth, the VDL house remains evidence that he sought to align modern forms with real human needs, leveraging breezes and sunlight in ways that more traditional homes often overlooked. David Adler, another Chicagoland luminary, approached residential design with a marked interest in historical continuity. His estate in Libertyville, Illinois, embodied his passion for Old World motifs, from English manor influences to French and Italian revival styles, yet it never felt too stuffy or formal. Unlike the purely modernist visions of Johnson and Neutra, Adler believed that a house could include classical flourishes and still be inviting for everyday life. Critics admire his skill in blending refined details like symmetrical facades, ornamental plasterwork, and carefully scaled archways with comfortable room layouts that suited American living patterns in the early 20th century. By setting up his own home in this style, Adler demonstrated that tradition could coexist with the pragmatic needs of modern families. Because he designed many large estates for wealthy clients, his personal house also served as something of a calling card, proof that historical references need not be overbearing. Instead, they could be gracefully woven into an environment where people felt at ease hosting gatherings, cooking meals, and lounging in daylight-filled salons. His approach reflects a critique of modernism's austerity. To Adler, the past held valuable lessons about craftsmanship and elegance that could enhance rather than hinder domestic life. In fully discarding the traditional, Buckminster Fuller may have been the boldest experimenter on this list, primarily known for his geodesic dome designs and forward-thinking concepts like Spaceship Earth. While he spent a great deal of time promoting these ideas globally, his personal life in Carbondale, Illinois revolved around actually inhabiting a dome from 1960 to 1971. This dome home showed that a geometric shell formed from interconnected triangles could enclose living spaces using fewer materials, less energy, and minimal structural support. Fuller's dedication to efficiency and sustainability was decades ahead of its time, grounded in a belief that humankind's survival depended on wise use of limited resources. Living daily under the angled panels allowed him to test the dome's performance in weather extremes to see how sound traveled within the space and to gauge how it felt to be surrounded by a futuristic geometry. Critics debate whether the design truly addressed all the comforts and needs of family life. Some find the dome's shape less than ideal for partitioning into rooms, yet Fuller's fearless approach challenged every preconceived notion of how a house should look or function. His dome house remains a monument to innovation, unhindered by tradition, reaffirming the radical potential of architecture to reimagine how we live. Yet Fuller wasn't the only one radically reinventing the notion of housing. Charles and Ray Eames, famed for their influential furniture and multimedia work, translated their broad creative ethos into the Eames House in Pacific Palisades, California. Part of the Case Study House program initiated by Arts and Architecture magazine after World War II, the Eames House was constructed in 1949 using industrial materials like off-the-shelf steel beams and panels. However, unlike some modernist houses that can feel stark or impersonal, the Eameses filled their home with books, artwork, artifacts, and playful experiments in color. The balance captured a core Eames philosophy: design should serve as a warm backdrop for human activity rather than an end in itself. While the home's open floor plan and glass walls projected a progressive aesthetic, the liberal use of rugs, plants, and personal mementos demonstrated a humanistic flair, an argument in effect that modern architecture can be both functional and cozy. Critics often applaud the way the Eames house integrates seamlessly into its wooded bluff, using large windows to let in ocean breezes and connect interior life with the surrounding meadow. Over time, the house grew into a living showcase for the Eames' overreaching belief that curiosity, play, and practicality could all thrive in the same domestic environment. Taken as a whole, these personal homes illustrate that architecture evolves not only through big public statements, but also through the everyday intimacies of living. For some architects like Frank Lloyd Wright and Richard Neutra, testing theories in their own homes allow them to refine approaches that would later become stylistic signatures. Others, such as Philip Johnson, use their residences to spark a dialogue about the extremes of transparency and minimalism, daring visitors to question what a home should provide. Buckminster Fuller exemplified the techno-optimist, pushing boundaries of geometry and resource efficiency at a time when such concerns were hardly mainstream. David Adler stood apart as a voice for classical references, proving that borrowed historical vocabularies could feel relevant and neighborly when carefully integrated. And in Frederick Law Olmsted's Unassuming Fairstead, we see the seed of a philosophy that would shape entire cities' green spaces, rooted in the idea that landscapes should invite people rather than overwhelm them. Visiting or studying these spaces today feels like stumbling onto each architect's hidden workshop. It is where they tested, risked, failed, and succeeded, where architecture was not just theory, but part of everyday life. And with that, I'll turn it over to you. Did any of these architects' residences stick out to you? Let me know down below in the comments section, and while you're there, make sure you're subscribed so you never miss an exciting episode of This House.